Hi there. I'm going to be documenting the building of a Hussite army, and will be for the Mortem Gloriam rules in using the Plastic Soldier Company 15mm army box sets mostly, with a few things supplemented in. Now, a little bit about the Hussites, for those who might not know. They were, in a way, a Protestant army 100 years before the Protestant Reformation, if you want to think of it like that. They were from Bohemia, that's on the east of the Holy Roman Empire. And during a time when the Catholic Church was in a lot of flux, there were 3 popes at one point. The Hussites were a religious movement that sought to break away from, well, some of them sought to fully break away from the papal church, but a lot of them were actually just reformers. They wanted to see a reformed version of the church. So you have different factions amongst the Hussites. They weren't a completely uniform movement. They started up after about 1415, 1416, after Jan Hus, the preacher from Prague, was betrayed and he was burnt alive for his beliefs. And this started the Hussite movement, which was eventually led by Jan Žižka, who was a veteran commander from the wars against the Teutonic Order, and he fought for the Polish faction over there. And the Polish and the various Lithuanian groups actually became an allied force that from time to time helped the Hussites against the German-speaking world. Now, the Hussites started off as a fairly irregular force. They had a few city militias that were probably a bit better equipped, because this was the age of the city leagues. And as they developed further and got more experience, Jan Žižka and his groups actually whipped them into shape and turned them into a very effective, very highly trained force. The bulk of their units tended to be battle wagons, and their entire army was structured around these wagon units. A wagon with its crew was almost the equivalent to what we would think of as a platoon today. They were the first army that really started mass incorporating gunpowder weaponry into their ranks, and uniquely they actually combined gunpowder weaponry with their wagons to create what you might think of as the first sort of medieval tanks. They had a very high proportion of handgunners as well as light artillery pieces built into the wagons. In addition to that, they had large groups of flailmen using the agricultural flails, which were modified into war implements. And although these might not sound too impressive, they were basically large spiky propellers, and any armored knight, no matter how well protected, if they came in range of those flails, took quite a beating. The flailmen started off fairly irregular, but like the rest of the army, they were drilled and better equipped as time went on. And particular groups of them, specifically the Taborites, were extremely, you might call them fanatical. They would fight to the last man. They would not run away. They had a reputation for so fearsome that when Taborite musicians and songs were heard approaching the battlefield, some of the Crusader armies are recorded to have simply abandoned the field, knowing that Taborites were on their way. Now that's a little bit about, there's a lot more to see, some very good books on the subject, but some of the best stuff is actually written in Czech, so it's a bit challenging to get. I'm actually working on a book myself that I hope can be of some use to wargamers. Now, to put this together, I have a 10mm Hussite army, which you can see here. I like 10mm, I like the small scales, it gives a nice mass combat effect. But the problem is most of the players around here that play Mortem and Gloriam tend to play in 15mm, sometimes even 28mm. So I thought at least for tournaments or large multiplayer games I need to try and get a 15mm army together. I could order an army, it's fairly expensive to get a decent sized army, but more than that it's very difficult to ship metal, especially heavy metal packages around right now. So much of the stuff I've ordered has been stuck in customs. I get surprised gigantic customs duties slapped on them. So I wanted to try and be as economical as I could here. So what I've managed to get are the Plastic Soldier Company 100 Years War Acto army sets, which are locally available. And here's the French and the English box set, and between the two I'm fairly confident I can put together a decent Hussite force, and I'll go through that. The challenge is going to be to put together the battle wagons, because there are no 15mm plastic box set of battle wagons. You'd have to order those. I would run into the same problem, having to import miniatures again. The other option is to scratch build them using plastic card, balsa wood. There are a few good tutorials online, especially doing the wheels, which are quite finicky to hand make. It can be done, a fair amount of work though. I'm fortunate in that I've got myself a resin 3D printer, and I decided let me design some wagons in Blender. As you can see, these are my models over here. It took a bit of trial and error and a few misprints before I realized how things needed to be supported properly to print well. Some of the settings weren't exactly according to the manual to actually get the wheel spokes to come out nice and clean. My first prints were for the 10mm and they came out decently. It took a bit more fiddling to get them to work really nicely with 15mm. So I'll show you some of the printed products that came out of that as I built the army. And now let's go to the Plastic Soldier Company box sets, and I'll do a little bit of an unboxing, look and see what we've got and what we can use. For the army list, I intend to have probably about 6 battle wagons. In Pacto, one base of battle wagons is 1 unit, so that would be 6 units. Every third battle wagon can be regraded into a cannon equipped battle wagon. So I will have 2 light artillery pieces built into the battle wagons, as well as 4 ordinary crossbow equipped battle wagons. They count as crossbows despite the large amount of gunpowder weaponry, mainly because the effects of crossbows at longer ranged, and the wagons did have a fairly decent range of fire. They mixed crossbow and handguns for that purpose. The crews of the battle wagons are also equipped with pole arms, flails and various types of pole arms. So they're fairly rugged, hardy troops. They can take a charge. A lot of the benefits that charging knights would have are negated against wagons. And the nice thing about the artillery wagons is that unlike a field artillery piece, they actually have count as having 2 light artillery batteries in one base. So they get double the shots. It's definitely worthwhile to mount your light artillery there. So let's take a look at this and see what we can make out of these box sets.